Welcome to Dental Business RX. Practice success in 30 minutes or less.
Thank you for calling ABC Dental.
Maybe it's just me, but have you noticed that over the past 4 years, customer service has become almost universally, terrible, or at least bad? It's gotten to the point, at least for me, that when I get what used to be average service, your basic expectation, it really stands out, which sort of tells you where we are. We have to lower our expectations. And there are some obvious and not so obvious reasons behind this problem. But the big joke to me, especially when you see it with big box stores or big businesses when they're replacing their labor force with, chat bots and this and that or whatever, is it's sold as a big win, where you're talking to the automated service. Here comes AI. And meanwhile, it takes you an hour and a half to find out what went wrong with your flight. But it's not just affecting large businesses. It's also affecting smaller ones. So again, you've hit the point where if you're average, it's almost like you're hitting a home run. If you're great, people will really be blown away. So what's causing this? What are the obvious and not so obvious reasons? And more importantly, how do we fix it? What are some of the things we should be looking for when we're hiring somebody or an employee for a service industry business? And what are some of the most important things that we should be training them on up front to ensure that we increase customer service in the practice, which thereby will increase loyalty, retention, and income? Well, that's what I want to talk about in this week's episode. My name is Jeff Bloomberg, and I'm your host. And I think the best place to start is, how did we get here? Now, look, I don't have all the answers. And some of this will be, as I mentioned, obvious and maybe not so obvious. But what are some of the obvious reasons? Well, we've had a tight labor market over the last 4 years. And what's the fallout from that? Wages have gone up, as well as other costs. And if you're a dentist and you're heavily involved in insurance, you may have trouble keeping up with that, right? But wages have gone up, not just in dentistry, they've gone up in every business. So you end up with more turnover. People are looking for greener pastures. Maybe you've invested time into training some people and they've gone. And maybe that puts you into a little bit of an apathetic state about training. And then they leave. Or you might have engaged in, or just like some other companies have, cost-cutting measures in order to be able to maintain a modicum of profitability, and therefore you're not providing the same level of service that you were before. Those are the obvious reasons. What is the not-so-obvious reason? The not-so-obvious reason is the labor quality itself. And I'm not, riding employees. I'm not saying they're bad, but the actual quality of labor. You have people who are not prepared to work in a service environment. And confirmatory of this, I've brought up this, there's a company called the National Federation of Independent Business, and they survey small business owners on the various problems they have about filling jobs and this and that and whatever. But labor quality, which you really didn't see a lot of as a problem pre-2020, is now becoming more and more of a problem. As a matter of fact, the number of respondents saying that labor quality is their biggest problem has ranged anywhere from 18 to 30% over the last 4 years. But what does that actually mean, labor quality? I've talked about this in other episodes. It's the ability of somebody to actually properly perform the job. So why are we having problems all of a sudden with labor quality? Well, it's a bit of a combo of the employees themselves, the people that you're hiring, and there's two aspects to that, and then the training mechanisms that you have in the practice. In certain cases, you might be hiring people who are just not a good fit for a service business. There's certain characteristics that you want to look for that make somebody a good fit for a service business. The other problem is I'm going to sound old as I say this, but the kids that are coming into the labor force today, the 20-somethings, are not trained on what many of us considered to be basic knowledge just 10 years ago. For example, in a dental practice, you're going to be writing a letter, most likely, if you're a specialist, thanking a doctor for a referral, or you're sending a letter out to new patients or someone who refers you patients, thanking them for the referral, or there's various types of correspondence that you need to engage in. Well, a lot of the younger people coming in today have never written a letter. It's all email or text. So they have no idea how to construct a business letter. And you'll get this piece of paper, which has, a date at the top, no address. And you go, what is this? And you might then instantly get upset and go, oh, this person is stupid or whatever. No, they've just never been trained on that. I learned how to write a business letter in the 3rd grade. Okay. Then you have other things, how you interact with people, how you greet them in a professional environment. A lot of the younger people coming into today's workforce just have never been taught how to do that. When I was a young man, I was taught that I greeted my elder as Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so, Mr. Jones, Mrs. Johnson. I didn't say, hey, bruh, or, I didn't do that. Whereas today, younger people have not necessarily been trained on these things. They also aren't given the specific expectations of a job. What hours are involved, what level of, how work performance ties into the eventual, whether they're going to be promoted, or retained and so on, whether they're going to get raises. That hasn't been made known to them. And you would expect, I don't know where I picked that up. You can think for yourself where you may have picked that up. I know that I kind of learned that very early on with my earliest employers when I was working part-time, after school in high school. But I don't know that maybe they're not working part-time at all. And I'm not saying this universally. Some kids are pretty well prepared, but for the most part, this has just been my observation. You don't have the same product coming into your business now that you would have had 10 years ago. And that doesn't make the kid deficient. It's just nobody ever taught them how to do it right. And it's funny, I covered this last year in our owners conference in May of 2023. And I had somebody walk up to me whose husband was, an executive at Wells Fargo. And Wells Fargo had this same realization a year or so ago, that they had to provide some form of training, a little bit of what we might call an undercut to the training that they would normally provide. You're bringing in a new employee and you maybe have certain onboarding procedures that you would do with every new employee. Maybe those procedures haven't changed for 10 or 15 years. Well, you might have to add some stuff to that now with the new, people coming in in the labor force who are younger. And, I've had a couple of clients complain about this with new graduates from dental school. Like, look, I'm in no position. This is what I hear, right? I can't judge or not judge this. But, I've had clients tell me I hired a new associate and, when they were in dental school, they never did a post and core. Like, I can't believe that they never did a post and core. Or they're comparing their dental education 15 years ago to the dental education a kid's getting now. So they're in a position where, again, their expectation would have been they'd get out of dental school, they'd be able to perform basic dentistry, and then they would do CE to learn more involved stuff, implants and things of that nature. But now they're finding having to teach them basic dentistry, things that they had already learned in dental school. So we could sit there and complain about it, kids today, which, get out of my yard, right? We could do all that or go, well, look, we have a business to run. We have a problem, so decisive action needs to be taken if we want to keep our business going. And the truth is, the majority of the people who are going to be applying to your practice as a potential employee are good, willing employees. There's just knowledge that they do not have, that you expect them to have, that they just are not learning anymore. I'm sure you could make a list of things that you have seen that you would have expected employees to know. I mean, I had another client talk to me the other day about someone who graduated from an assistant program. I think it was in New York. They paid $40,000 for this assistant program. They couldn't do anything in the doctor's estimation, or what they would have expected an assistant to be able to do, or what they could have done 10 years ago. So look, it's a non-optimum situation. It's not great. But sitting and complaining about it isn't going to get us anywhere. We have to figure out how to handle this if we want to move forward, right, and actually continue to be successful. So what I figured I'd do here is take a look at what are some of the basic things, because I run a service business. What are some of the basic things I'm looking for, and you're in a service business, with an employee I'm hiring? The basic requirements, regardless of the position I'm putting them in. What are some of the qualities they would have to have? And then what are some of the things that I would want to teach them quickly? Even before or at the same time that we're teaching them their job. So what are some of the basic qualities? Well, I want somebody who is smart or bright. They're quick, they're sharp, they're able to learn. All right. How would I know if somebody is able to learn? Well, I'm not going to necessarily know that as part of the interview process. There are a few tips or tricks I could give you that we give our clients to see if the person can at least listen. But I'm going to want to determine early on, especially, actually, regardless of the person I hired, can they follow instructions and can they actually, produce something? Because if they can't, I'm not going to invest a ton of time and effort into training this person. It's just a complete waste of my time. So let's say you've hired a new employee to do, I don't know, scheduling, collections, answer the phone, etc. I would never put a new person on answering the phone, even if they were great at answering the phone elsewhere, because I've never seen them answer the phone. I'm going to want to see it. But the first thing I want to determine is this an actual, employee who's going to potentially make it in my business? So I'm going to give them something to do, which is easy to learn, see if they can follow instructions, and see if they can come through. So what I usually recommend, if you've hired maybe a non-specific administrative personnel that you're eventually looking at using at the front desk, the first thing I'd probably do with somebody like this, beyond your initial onboarding, is I would have them help you with reactivation. I guarantee you have a bunch of inactive charts, okay? Patients who haven't been in the practice for a while. So you teach them the basics of how to do reactivation, whatever your policy is. Maybe after 3 years, you want a new initial exam if the patient hasn't been in, right? And every X amount of years, you want a new full mouth. So, that would change the scheduling, as far as the amount of time that you're scheduling. I teach them basic things. If you're calling a family, you're not calling for the 8-year-old. You're calling for the 8-year-old's mom, right? So I teach them some basic stuff. And I'd say, okay, cool. So let's get on the phone and you need to schedule X. You'd work with them on a basic pattern on how they're calling to schedule for the patient's next checkup, and then get them on the phone and see if they can schedule any appointments. If I have somebody spending days and days on the phone and scheduling nothing, why am I going to burn more time training this person? They obviously can't produce. Or on top of that, let's say I give them very specific instructions, like, look, you have to look at the age and who the responsible party is before you call any patient. And then I find they're calling and asking for somebody who's 4. Is Johnny there? Then that's just somebody who can't follow instruction. We'll take a look at training is basically instructions. If you're teaching somebody how to file an insurance, or teaching somebody how to schedule or block schedule, those are instructions. So if someone can't follow basic instructions, how do you think they're going to follow more complex instructions? Like what major change do you think is going to happen to that person where they're going to follow instructions all of a sudden? Don't waste your time. So that's more or less how I would start out. They're smart, they're bright, they're alive, they're quick, they're able to learn and follow instructions. I would also want to make sure that they actually enjoy working with people. And how would I know that? Obviously, you could ask that, do you like working with people? And I could lie to you, super easy. I'm going to watch, okay? Like, when you hire somebody, you're not officially putting them on quote unquote probation, because that's a whole other thing. Talk to your employment attorney about that. That's a whole other thing. So I'm not going to get into that. That's an employment attorney question. But the other thing I'm going to look for, especially in the service business, you are serving. You're providing a service, okay? So if I have somebody who feels, and I'm doing quotation fingers here, they're too quote unquote important to serve another. Let's say you tell the receptionist, listen, part of the job is when the trash overfills, you don't wait for the janitorial staff, you take the trash out. When you have a second, when the phone's not ringing or there's no patients in reception, you take the trash out. And the person looks at you and goes, oh, well, taking the trash out was not part of my job, so why would I take the trash out? Like it's beneath them. I wouldn't employ that person. I've actually let people go on that basis because you know what? If I see a paper towel on the floor in our bathroom or trash is overflowing, heck, I've unplugged toilets at our company, okay? I don't care. I'm not too proud to do anything. My job, obviously it's not something I'm doing all the time, and if I've hired somebody to unplug toilets and I'm doing it, that's a whole other problem. But I'm not too important to do anything, and my job is to provide an incredible, high-quality service environment for the clients that are in my space. I'm here to serve them, okay? So if you have somebody who is quote unquote too important to serve the public, that's probably not somebody you want in a service position. I would not hire them, okay? Or if they started to prove that they were that way, I would not keep them. Education, background, to me, those things are not that critical. Obviously, unless it's a licensed position. If I have somebody who comes in and they've got little to no work experience, but they're bright, they're alive, they can learn, they're willing to help and serve others, then that's the type of person I want to bring into the environment. I'm going to teach them as quickly as possible. And obviously, the more responsibility they take, the faster they're going to move up within my organization. All right, so that's sort of the person I'm looking for in a service business. Honestly, if I had a product business too, I'd probably be doing the same thing. but you especially, the majority of my listeners are obviously in the dental industry or in the service business. That's sort of the archetype of what you're looking for. And I know I spent a little bit of time on it, but the biggest deal to me is somebody who's too important to serve. Okay. That's always it's like a non-starter for me. All right. So what are some of the things, in addition to whatever training we're going to do for their job or whatever, what are some of the things we want to train people on to avoid, like the customer service problems or faux pas, right? Well, why don't we start by taking a look at the things that we as consumers hate? You may have your own list and you should make it because that's your practice. But, what do I hate? I hate waiting, especially unnecessarily, because, it's like being at the DMV, right? You're waiting and there's a number and you're just waiting and it's interminable. And you know what? Nobody cares that you're waiting. And, you have to go there because there's not a competitive DMV. But guess what? There's competitive dental practices, folks. Okay. I hate inattentiveness, like I'm waiting or something's wrong and nobody cares. I don't like being treated poorly or like I'm a bother for frequenting their business. I don't like being treated, not that I care about how quote unquote important I am, but again, if I'm treated like garbage, that bothers me. If I have somebody who's not empathetic, someone who doesn't really know what's happening, I ask questions and they look like they're completely confused. They have no idea. Look, I know some things are more complex. So let's say I have a newer employee and they can answer, I have 10 questions and they can answer at least 5 or 6 of them. And I ask more complex ones, right? Hey, I had this crown done X numbers of years ago. Do you know if my insurance will cover if the doctor has to redo it? Well, maybe they don't know that yet. They have to go get the office manager. But they can answer some of my basic ones. That's not bad. Okay. I can deal with that. If they're really giving it an effort and doing their best. And also on the flip side, you don't want them giving me wrong answers. Oh yeah, you have all the coverage you need. And then I don't, right? And you don't want just slipshod, clumsy, for lack of a word, doofy service, right? You want the person to feel like they have it somewhat together. Those are the things that bother me the most. Okay. So you should make your own list. You should make your own list. But these are things that people would have to know, from day one, the first 1 to 2 weeks. You tell them, listen, this is my practice. This is how I run things. This is what's important to me. These are my patients coming in here. This is the spirit of this office. This is how we treat all of our patients. Okay. So then you want to go about fixing it. You make your list, and you want to start training people on this. Well, the first thing I would recommend if you're doing any type of customer service training is to record it. This does not have to be a Martin Scorsese movie, okay? This is not important. You get an iPhone with a tripod and you save the video. It doesn't matter if the lighting is perfect or not. The audio is important because you're going to want people to hear what's going on. And if there's anything you're displaying on screen as the person's watching the video, they have to be able to see it. Okay. I would suggest the tripod so it doesn't look like the Blair Witch Project, right? And it's watchable without nausea. But you want to as you're training employees on some basic things, you video it so when you hire new employees, they can just watch the video. That will also take a lot of the time out of what you've been spending. That's one of the big problems when we're getting a new employee is we have to go through all that onboarding and training again. Well, if it's really just a matter of pressing play, and you could even, if you're really smart, give a couple of exercises for the person to do based on what they watched in the video. Okay. For example, like let's say you had a video on how to write a business letter. Okay. Or maybe there's just a video online you could find, have somebody watch. Well, then they should do an exercise. This could all be on a piece of paper, like a little checklist. Watch video X on how to write a business letter. Okay, good. Write a business letter to a patient thanking them for referring one of their friends. You may have a form letter for this, but let's see how they do, right? And see if they can put together a business letter. Give them things to do to actually practice what it is that they're learning. So let's say, you don't want people waiting, or how do you want patients handled when they're waiting? Maybe you have a certain, like I know what I would want is if I'm waiting and I'm going to be waiting, I want to be informed of that right away. Let's say it was not expected that the doctor was running behind when I arrived. Otherwise, you would have called me earlier and told me I had more time because that might be part of your policy. But let's say I arrive, the doctor is expecting to see me at 1 o'clock and that's when my appointment time is. And it's like 1:02 and I'm still not going back, well, then I would expect someone to come to me and explain to me what's going on. Jeff, the doctor asked me to come talk to you real quick. Here's what's going on. He or she estimates she'll be done in 15 minutes. Wanted me to apologize. Things ran a little bit longer within the last patient that was expected. Something just came up. Okay, I can deal with that. I might ask, well, do you know when I'm going to be done today? Well, you would just add 15 minutes to the appointment. So we expected that you would be done at 2:30, so it would be 2:45. Does that still work for you? Yes, it does. Again, we apologize. I know in certain cases we have clients who will give Starbucks gift cards out if the wait's going to be egregious or something like this, but there's some attention placed on me. It's not like you're here, it's 105, and we're the DMV, and we really just don't care, okay? So you drill your staff on this. You're the patient. You're sitting in reception. You're waiting for the doctor. Have your staff come handle you. Okay, maybe first you video how to do it right, and then you have them do it with you till they feel comfortable handling that. You might want to also, sometimes you have patients who are upset. Now, I'm going to say this very qualified in the sense that this is within reason. Maybe someone's just a little irritated because they're waiting. I could have somebody deal with that. If someone's nasty or rude, that person should talk to the office manager or the doctor. They may not belong in the practice. You don't want your receptionist handling this. But you give your staff exercises on keeping composed, you see? And how would they handle that? If the person's upset, how would you diffuse that so that the patient is able to, everybody's able to move on? You could give them exercises on how to handle basic questions, especially as the receptionist. This would also be important with when they're answering phone calls and things like this. You may even give them exercises, again, because remember, you have folks walking in missing basic knowledge on how to actually operate in a service environment, being attentive, being friendly, what that might look like, have them do it, drill it. And I can't stress this enough. You might think that, let's say you take an hour off or an hour and a half off to do this with some of your new employees. You might think, oh my gosh, I'm losing all this chair time. That is going to make you so much more money in the long run. So much more money in the long run. Okay? So I would definitely recommend that you do it. It's worth investing the time. And then, of course, you have to do whatever training that they have to do on their job. There are some other things, that they're coming to mind as I'm recording this. But let me give you another example. Let's say I'm waiting. The doctor is waiting to see me, right? Or maybe I haven't even been spoken to by the front yet, or there's something that I'm supposed to do with somebody that's at the front. And then I see that person talking to another employee, and they're talking about what they did the past weekend. Right? Or I'm in the middle with talking to one of your employees and another employee walks up and interrupts with something that obviously isn't an emergency and doesn't require their immediate attention, but the interrupter really wanted to get their question answered. These are the types of things, it's turning into a rant, I apologize, but these are the types of things that you want to eliminate, stupid stuff like that, because there's nothing more irritating than you're waiting, and you see two people talking about what they did this weekend, and they're not talking to you. Again, it's, why am I here? I feel like I'm at the DMV. It reminds me of, passing through Homeland Security. I don't know if I get in trouble for saying that. When, I was coming back from Canada and we're waiting. My wife had a green card at the time before she got her citizenship. And we're waiting for the, Homeland Security agent, and he's eating a donut in his office. I feel like I was in a Seinfeld episode, right? You go, come on. Like, I get that there are breaks and things like this. We're about to miss our flight. The rest of my family is now at the gate. Okay. So these are the types of things that you want to eliminate, because those are the type of things that will kill goodwill for your practice. Okay. And look, I'm a huge fan of using technology to improve productivity and efficiency. We do it here. I love automatic texting programs. I love automatic confirmation programs. Reactivate, all this stuff is so cool. It makes life, if you're in practice today, and let's say you've only been in practice for the last 5 years, you have no idea how good you have it compared to 20 some odd years ago when people were still on paper schedules and pegboard systems for accounting at times. Actually, maybe 30 years ago. You saw the beginnings of the computer programs, right? But so you're in a good position, but there are certain things where a computer works and certain places that they don't. And the only thing I'll mention is answering the phones. The last thing you want, if you're going to spend money on marketing, you don't want a computer answering your phone. Okay. You don't want an automated answering service. Press 1 for appointments, press 2 for blah. You may think that's really cool or whatever. There's been plenty of studies on this, but this will definitely lower your new patients. You should have a live person answering the phone as much as possible. So, shorter episode this week. Make your list, all right? Know what you're looking for when you're looking for a prospective employee in a service business. Make your list of the things that bug you as a customer, and make sure that those things aren't happening in your office as a first order of priority. Do it while you're training a new employee as a part of their job, and make sure you record these things so that you have them when you bring in a new employee. Pretty simple. I do hope that it helps. This is, we go over a lot more in the training and things of that nature on the MGE Power Program. If you want to find out more about that, I'll put a link to it on the episode webpage. Otherwise, if you want to find out more about MGE, you can find us at mgeonline.com, or you can call us at 800-640-1140. Folks, have a great week, and we'll see you at the next episode.